Tonight, we look north. The world is changing, and so is the map of North American trade. As the sun sets over Canada's vast cities and landscapes, a new story is unfolding, one that will shape the future of economies on both sides of the border. A powerful shift is redrawing the economic map of North America. Trade routes that once ran almost exclusively between the US and Canada are now branching out, connecting Canadian ports and businesses to new partners across the Atlantic and Pacific. For decades, US-Canada trade was a reliable engine of prosperity. The two countries built a partnership that fueled jobs, innovation, and growth, with goods and services flowing freely across the world's longest undefended border. But now, that engine is sputtering for major American companies. Factories that once thrived on cross-border demand are seeing orders slow, and business leaders are facing tough questions about the future. New Canadian trade deals are tilting the playing field toward Europe and the Pacific. Canada is forging ahead, signing agreements that open up vast new markets and opportunities, while the US watches from the sidelines. This isn't just about tariffs, it's about jobs, choices, and the foundation of a century-old partnership. The ripple effects reach into every community, every workplace, and every household, changing what people buy and where those products come from. Canada's new alliances are changing the rules. The country is positioning itself as a global trading hub, leveraging its connections to Europe and Asia to gain a competitive edge. With CETA and CPTPP, Canada has opened its doors to Europe and Asia, while some US goods face new hurdles. These agreements mean lower tariffs and easier access for foreign products, but higher barriers for American exports. Products from Japan, Germany, and Vietnam are now cheaper on Canadian shelves than American ones. Shoppers are noticing the difference, and their choices are shifting in real time. The impact is just beginning to be felt. News outlets are reporting on the changing landscape, and economists are warning of long-term consequences for both countries. For some iconic US brands, it feels like an earthquake. Products that once dominated Canadian markets are losing ground, and companies are scrambling to adapt. Imagine a Canadian shopper choosing between American and French cheese. Today, the French cheese is cheaper, thanks to new trade deals. That single choice is being repeated in thousands of stores every day. Multiply that choice by millions, and you get a massive economic disruption. The effects ripple outward, impacting suppliers, workers, and entire industries on both sides of the border. Billions in trade are being diverted, right on our doorstep. The flow of goods is changing direction, and the consequences are being felt in real time by businesses and workers alike. How bad is it? Tonight, we investigate. We'll dig into the numbers, the stories, and the people behind this seismic shift in North American trade. We'll look at US brands caught in the crossfire and the real-world consequences for American workers. For many, these changes mean uncertainty, layoffs, and tough choices about the future. This isn't a distant problem. It's about our neighbors, our economy, and our future. The ties that bind our countries are being tested in new and unexpected ways. The rules have changed, and the US is watching its closest ally build new alliances. The story begins now as we uncover the new reality of North American trade and what it means for all of us. To truly understand today's crisis and the challenges facing North American businesses, we need to look back at the long and complex history between the United States and Canada. The US-Canada trade relationship is not only one of the world's oldest, but also one of its most successful and deeply interconnected. For over a century, goods, services, and people have flowed easily across the world's longest undefended border, fueling economic growth on both sides. The 1988 Free Trade Agreement, followed by the landmark 1994 NAFTA deal, created a massive free trade zone that transformed the continent. These agreements broke down barriers, encouraged investment, and made North America a global economic powerhouse. NAFTA defined North American commerce for decades, even as it sparked heated debates over jobs, wages, and prices. While some communities thrived, others struggled to adapt to the new realities of global competition. Businesses on both sides of the border built complex supply chains around NAFTA's rules, linking factories, farms, and warehouses in ways never seen before. Then, in 2020, the USMCA replaced NAFTA, updating the agreement for the digital age, new industries, and modern labor standards. It was seen as a fresh start, promising stability and growth. For a brief moment, the partnership between the US and Canada seemed secure, with leaders and businesses optimistic about the future. But as the US turned its focus inward, prioritizing North American trade, Canada began to look outward, seeking new opportunities beyond its southern neighbor. Canada actively pursued trade diversification, signing new agreements and building relationships with Europe, Asia, and other global partners, aiming not to rely solely on the US market. This quiet but deliberate policy shift was a hedge against the uncertainty of relying on a single partner, especially as global trade tensions rose. Now that hedge is no longer just a backup plan, it's becoming Canada's main strategy for economic security and growth. American businesses that once took the Canadian market for granted are waking up to a new reality where competition is fierce and old assumptions no longer hold true. Two major trade deals are at the heart of this dramatic shift in Canada's economic landscape, fundamentally changing how the country does business with the world. The first is CETA, the Comprehensive Economic and Trade Agreement, signed between Canada and the European Union. This landmark deal eliminated nearly all tariffs on goods traded between the two partners, opening up vast new opportunities for both sides. Now, European products, like luxury cars, fine wines and specialty cheeses, enter Canada without the burden of tariffs. This has made them more affordable and attractive to Canadian consumers, directly challenging the dominance of US products on store shelves. The second deal, the CPTPP, is a sweeping trade pact with Pacific nations such as Japan, Australia, and others. It officially went into effect for Canada in 2018, further expanding Canada's access to fast-growing Asian markets and strengthening economic ties across the Pacific Rim. Meanwhile, the United States chose to withdraw from the original TPP, leaving Canada to forge ahead and build new alliances on its own. This move set Canada apart as a proactive player in global trade. As a result, Canada now holds a unique position. It is the only G7 country with free trade agreements in place with all other G7 nations. This rare status gives Canadian businesses a significant edge in global markets. With these deals, Canada has become a true global crossroads for trade and investment, attracting companies and investors from around the world who want access to both North American and international markets. For American companies, the landscape has changed. They now face tariffs and stiffer competition in Canada, while European and Asian goods flow in more freely than ever before, reshaping the market dynamics. The playing field is no longer level. Canadian consumers and businesses have more choices, and US firms must work harder to maintain their market share. As of September 2025, the effects are unmistakable. European and Asian companies have established robust supply chains and distribution networks throughout Canada, making their presence felt in every sector. For Canadian shoppers, US brands are no longer the automatic choice. Instead, they're just one option among a diverse and growing selection of international products, reflecting Canada's new role in the global economy. Which American brands are feeling the heat? In dairy, Kraft Heinz faces a 15% drop in market share as EU cheese floods in tariff-free. Automakers like Cadillac and Lincoln are losing ground to German luxury brands, now cheaper thanks to CETA. European luxury car sales in Canada are up 10% year over year. California winemakers like Gallo are losing shelf space to European, Australian, and Chilean wines. US wine imports are down 8%, while EU imports are up 12%. Jack Daniel's now competes with tariff-free Irish and Scotch whiskies. Caterpillar faces new competition from Japan's Komatsu with cheaper machinery under CPTP. Tyson Foods and Campbell's Soup are squeezed by tariff-free imports of processed chicken and beef. Campbell's reports unprecedented competition from international brands. The result? A slow erosion of market share for these American icons. The impact on these brands is just the beginning. When Ford's Lincoln sales drop in Canada, it affects parts suppliers and workers across the Midwest. Lower demand for Kraft Heinz and Tyson Foods hits American farmers in Wisconsin, Vermont, Arkansas, and Georgia. Canada is a top export market for US agriculture, but exports have flattened while CETA and CPTPP countries grow. US companies may now build plants in Canada to access global markets, diverting investment and jobs. The pain is concentrated in manufacturing states and rural communities. Factory towns and farmers are watching their biggest export market shrink. The economic tremors are real and growing. The consequences go beyond economics. Politically, US-Canada relations are strained. Lawmakers demand action, feeling the US was outmaneuvered as Canada played a global game. calls for tougher trade stances complicate diplomacy. Socially, border towns feel the impact as cross-border shopping declines and local businesses suffer. The sense of a shared community is being tested. The trade shift fuels debates about globalization, protectionism, and America's role in the world. Canada is asserting its independence, and the old Big Brother dynamic is fading. The relationship is now one of equals, with new complexities and challenges. We spoke with trade experts for perspective. Dr. Elaine Bernard calls Canada's strategy brilliant. While the US built walls, Canada built bridges. The US withdrawal from TPP was a strategic blunder, and now American companies are paying the price. Economist Michael Gregory says the shift is a slow erosion, not a collapse, like a river changing course. The USMCA tried to stem the tide, but CETA and CPTPP opened new floodgates. Consultant Sarah Pitt warns US firms, Canada is no longer exports light. Companies need a dedicated Canada strategy and must compete on more than proximity. Political analyst Dr. David Morrison says this is a wake-up call for US foreign policy. Even close allies will act in their own interest. The US must decide if it wants to help write the rules of global trade, or be forced to react to them. For consumers, it all comes down to what's on the shelf. In Canada, shoppers enjoy more choices and lower prices: Australian wine, Irish cheddar, Japanese TVs. Competition benefits Canadian wallets and forces all companies to step up. For Americans, the effects are indirect. Less export revenue can mean slower wage growth and less investment at home. American brands are losing cultural dominance in Canada as younger consumers embrace global options. Trade policy now shapes what we buy, how much it costs, and the opportunities in our communities. So, how bad is it? For US brands, the challenge is real and structural. This isn't a temporary storm, it's a new climate. But it's also a story of adaptation. American businesses must innovate and compete in a crowded marketplace. The lesson: global engagement matters, and isolation carries risks. Businesses must get smarter. Policymakers must rethink trade strategy. The US-Canada relationship is at a crossroads. The choices we make now will shape our economy for decades. This is a challenge and an opportunity. The next chapter is up to us.